I've been exploring a lot of mystical, kind of magical methods and techniques and abilities recently, specifically this week, channeling. And with that, there's been a lot of thought about the idea of different realities and timelines and all of these different things. And so I want to take today to talk about all of these things and just kind of share what I've been learning about. So channeling, what is it? Big question answer. From my understanding, it is when a physical human body and their soul make an agreement with another entity. And the agreement is essentially to receive information from the other entity and to relay it into our world where we are speaking right now, where you're watching this video. So essentially, from my understanding, you're connecting with another being, another source of energy, a soul, something like that. And you are basically allowing yourself to be a vessel, a channel, hence the word, to receive information and to share it with the world. There are a few people, notably, that I have been looking into recently. The biggest one being a man named Daryl Anka, who channels an extraterrestrial from a different reality who goes by Bashar. You may have come across this on your Instagram feed. It's a guy who sits with his fingers touching each other and his eyes closed, and he speaks very peculiarly. Is that a word? I don't think so. And I've been listening to Bashar's channeling and his messages, but also I just finished a podcast where Daryl himself was talking, and they're entirely different personalities, which is what is very interesting to me. And the second person is Lee Harris, who channels messages from his spirit guides. And he has a thing called an energy update that he does every month, which is just like receiving information about what is to come, maybe in this month, and sharing that with the world. Now, I wanted to talk about this today because this is something that I feel like the lines are very blurry, because when you start to get into this territory, it's like, what's real, what's made up, what am I to believe? And I think for me, that's why it's feeling really important right now, is because I'm realizing that maybe reality, the world, the way the universe works is different than what I grew up believing, the way that I've been thinking for a long time. I'm expanding kind of my awareness of that, which is the process of spiritual growth, is more and more awareness of different things until you eventually, if you do reach what people call enlightenment, I believe that you're just returning to full awareness, which is just like the source of where you come from. So this for me has been a little bit strange, because as I'm exploring Bashar specifically, he, as Daryl explains, is an extraterrestrial from a different parallel reality that we could not access in our reality, but he's like 500 light years or 500,000 light years in the direction of the Orion star system, something like that. And so even that in itself is like, oh, it's not even something that we could reach in our physical reality. But for me, what has been really interesting is just opening my mind to the possibility that a lot of these things that were talked about in science fiction and in mythology and, just like conversations that people like questioning things in real life, a lot of these things could potentially be true. Do I know that to be true? No. But for me, the interesting thing is being open to the fact that it could be true has allowed me to think differently and be a little more open to go, okay, maybe everything isn't as it seems all the time, and that's okay. It's not something to be scared of. It just means I don't have enough awareness to fully understand it yet. So this concept of channeling, I think, is really connected to intuition, where, a lot of these kind of more mystical abilities, skills like telepathy and being a psychic and these types of things, which I think for a lot of people for a long time have been like these fictional, magical things that don't exist. I'm starting to see that, there's actually a lot of truth to a lot of this, and maybe it just doesn't exist in the way that we think that it does. But let's take intuition, for example, because I think it's the easiest way to wrap your head around this, and it has been for me. We've all had an experience where you walk into a room and there are people there, and the energy is like tense. You can feel that there's something going on, something has happened, you're walking into something. You don't have any context for what just happened, the conversation that was had. You may not even know these people, the relationship. There's a lack of information, but there's a feeling that you can feel. You can read the energy, you can feel those things. I think that is an innate human ability that has been diminished because we're not practicing it. And I think if you hone something like that and just improve it, that is where some of these abilities come in. Being able to read other people on a deeper level, energetically, telepathically, these types of things. And I think why some of this stuff can feel scary maybe to talk about is because it has been kind of pushed off to the side as like not real, not important, fake. But something like that, you walking into a room and feeling somebody's energy, that is something very real that we've all experienced. And so if that can be true, why can't an elevated version of that also be true? If we're able to sense energy and everything is energy, we come from a spiritual realm and we are just experiencing this human experience. Why would we say that it's not possible to basically return to that realm and remember how to do things like that, to connect with other people in a non-physical way? So the idea of channeling has been on my mind a lot recently, and I feel like it's something that we could all do. But I've been listening to these people talk and trying to figure out, how do I start to implement this in my own life? Because I've done a lot of writing in my personal experience, where I'll go into a journaling session with the intent of like receiving information. And I've been doing this for several years, and it comes out in words and phrases that I would not use. Like the word shall comes up a lot, or being spoken to as my child. Like, I don't know where that's coming from. I don't know why I'm saying that. But I also don't know if it's possibly just my subconscious making this thing up. There's always a level of skepticism to all of this until I think you have a really strong experience where you're like, no, this is evidence for me. And so I'm not fully there yet. I'm in full belief that it's possible, that Bashar is real, that he is being channeled by this man named Daryl, that this other guy, Lee Harris, is sharing information that is not coming from him as a human. But as for doing it myself, or for you listening, that part I'm a little confused about, but I'm really interested in. So I'm curious, for you listening to this, where you sit on that spectrum of belief and maybe experience. If you've had these experiences, have you tried channeling? Have you had moments where you feel like you've been guided to do something and it wasn't you? I think that we all have that. But it's a weird line, because as Lee said in one of these interviews, he's talking about the first time he was contacted by his guides. And he said, I heard it like a human voice right here. And it sounded like somebody speaking to me. And he goes, of course, the next few days, my thoughts were, oh, like, am I hearing voices? You know, do I have some sort of thing going on in my brain where I'm hearing voices? And so it's not something I think to be taken lightly. That's why I'm like really trying to genuinely understand it. But I wanted to just drop in to share these two names, just because those are people that I'm looking into right now. Check out Bashar and check out what Lee Harris has to say. Both of them have many interviews and podcasts that you could listen to, so I encourage you to research it yourself. But the second thing that comes with this idea of receiving information from other beings, being contacted from them, is this concept of different realities, different timelines, different worlds that exist outside of ours that we're being contacted from. Worlds in the sense of like a spiritual, ether or world that we cannot maybe fully even comprehend. And this has also been on my mind because, again, where is the scientific evidence of this is often the question. And for me, I'm not necessarily always of the belief that something has to have scientific evidence to be true, because there are a lot of things, as I've said before, that can't be explained and probably shouldn't be explained. They're just meant to be felt and understood. And so this is one of them for me, where I'm like, this idea of different realities existing has to be true. I don't know why, but for me, it just feels like it has to be true. The term timeline has been thrown around a lot. I've seen it on the internet recently being very popular, talking about like quantum leaping and shifting timelines, timeline jumping, this kind of thing. And I'm of the belief that that is true. And I wanted to share a couple things that have happened that I'm like, okay, am I in like a different reality? Like, did it just like shift? Did I all of a sudden kind of arrive in a different plane of existence? And now my physical reality is like showing different things to me? One of the things is the beach that I walk on to get to where I am right now recording this podcast. For the first 2.5 months of me being here, I would walk this way, and there was a river I had to walk through. If the tide was really high, it would fill up the river and it would be like up to almost my shoulders, and I'd have to walk through it. And I think it was last episode or the episode before, I walked over here and the river just wasn't there. Like, there's the main river, but the little stream that connected the river to the ocean was just gone. The sand had moved supposedly up into this big hill, and the tide just didn't reach it anymore. And yeah, obviously I know that the earth moves and shifts and changes, but it was like one time I was here and it was just like really flat and there was no storm or anything, like nothing changed. And then the next time I came, it was just completely different. The terrain just felt totally different. And that was the second time that happened that week. The other time was I went to a beach that I go to sometimes for sunset, and normally you enter through this little road that heads out onto the beach. And this time when I arrived at the beach, it was blocked off by a pile of rocks, and then there was a separate road to its left that was there, magically opened up, and I'd never seen that in my life. If I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure it was just like forest to my left. But there was all of a sudden this road that looked like it had been there for a long time, and I was really confused. And in the past, I would have been like, oh, they just like did some construction and moved this. But recently I've been like, yeah, that's probably true. But also, what if I've like entered a different version of my life? Like, what if I'm in a different reality right now? Because a lot of people talk about the concept of how everything exists all at once. Everything everywhere all at once. It's like that movie, which that movie is literally about that. It's about shifting realities. So the idea is that every version of this moment right here exists right now. There are infinite possibilities of what could be happening right now. There's a version of you listening to this where I am in a different country. There's a version of this where you're watching this on your bed, or you're watching this on the beach, or there's a version where you can't understand me because I'm speaking a different language. All of those things exist at once. That part, kind of hard to wrap your brain around. I still don't fully understand it. But if that is true, then that should mean that if you are able to focus your attention strong enough on a different reality, you should be able to arrive there because you're technically everywhere all at once. This is pretty complicated, complex stuff that, again, I'm just like starting to scratch the surface of, and I have no idea how to do all of these things. I'm trying to learn. I think a lot of it comes from meditation on a feeling the experience so strongly that it just becomes real, which is how instant manifestation works. No, I don't mean like, oh, if I just believe hard enough that I'm in Japan right now, I will just magically teleport to Japan. No, maybe that does exist, but that's not what I'm trying to reference. In my life, what I'm experiencing that as, or thinking about it as, is if I'm working on the process of trying to become a different version of myself, have different experiences, elevate my awareness, my consciousness, all of these different things, theoretically, if I do that successfully at a moment in time, things should look and feel different around me because I am on a new plane of existence, right? And so do I know if any of this is actually true, or if the waves just pushed the sand onto the beach and there was construction on that other beach and I didn't see any of that and I'm just interpreting it a different way? I don't know. I don't know what the truth is, but I do like the idea of just thinking about the concept that maybe you can actually kind of bloop, 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 like move along to different realities at any given point if you actually start to focus your time and energy into that. Again, this concept kind of feels like a crazy thing to talk about if it's new, which it is relatively new to me, but I think it feels crazy because it seems like something in the past that, a younger version of myself wouldn't have believed because I didn't have the awareness that these types of things were actually possible. And so now I feel like, more of the landscape in front of me has like been opened up and I'm like, oh, wait, I could see how this could maybe be possible. And I'm sure, again, in 5-10 years, I'll be like, oh, I see even more. I was totally right, or I was totally wrong, or I'm even more confused, And so I'm sharing this with you not to give you cold hard facts or evidence or say that this thing is right or correct or true, but I'm sharing it to hopefully expand your awareness a little bit, because these things coming into mine has been really, really fascinating, and it's made me look at life a little bit differently, look at spirituality a little bit differently, and just every moment I feel like is a little more magical because I'm like, what if? Like, what if I have the ability to shift into a different reality right now? And that's an actual true fact. What if that is true? That makes you think a little bit differently. That makes you feel a little bit differently. So I hope that you can take away something that is of interest here and maybe go and research it a little bit yourself. If these are things that you've been thinking about, you have any thoughts about it, I would love to hear from you. You can leave a comment if you're listening on Spotify or watching on YouTube, or if you want to send me an email, I can check it out and maybe respond to it next episode. You can email me at theintothelightpodcast@gmail.com. I would love to hear your thoughts on this, because this is one of the things where we're starting to kind of push the boundaries of like what feels like you're talking crazy and what is actually true. And that is kind of the whole point of why I'm here, is to share these things that maybe not everybody is talking about in your life, or maybe they are, and it's just confirmation that other people are also thinking this. So for me, nothing is off limits in this podcast. I am open in my life and speaking to you to being disproven, to learning something new, to expanding my awareness even further. I feel like that is kind of the whole point of the journey, is just to continue to learn and grow and experience new things and question yourself and prove something to be right or disprove it and find new evidence or whatever it is. I think that messy part of the journey is kind of an exciting part of the journey. So just wanted to let you in on some of the thoughts I've been having, things I've been looking into. I didn't get too deep into Bashar specifically, which I think is like you've got to be on board with the idea that it could be possible to fully hear what he has to say and believe that. At the very least, if you're skeptical, I encourage you to look into it with an open mind. Not saying it's true, not saying it's not true. I'm just saying that these things have been brought into my awareness recently, and I wanted to share them with you. So I know this episode was a little different, but I was really excited to talk about these things, and I hope you enjoyed it. I have a goal of reaching 1,000 people per month sometime this year on this podcast, and that feels really important to me because I want to grow this space to encourage and support more people on their journey. It's really important to me. I feel like that's my purpose. That's why I'm here. So if you want to support that and you want to help, the easiest way you can do that is just to share this episode with someone new. So I thank you in advance for that. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day, wherever you are in the world. I'm excited to hear from at least one of you about your experience thinking about these things, and I will see you next week. Bye.